The Class 59 tends to sit in the shadow of its more illustrious successor in the shape of the Class 66, and the same more or less applies in the modelling world. Dapols Class 59 is a case in point, with many being indifferent to its smoke capability and preferring to wait for the reincarnation of the Hattons Class 66 from Accurascale. But are people missing a trick with the Dapol Class 59? And does it perhaps deserve more attention than it's been given? It's time to take a closer look. So thanks for joining today's review. We'll kick off with the usual unboxing, and then we'll get into our close-up and 360 views. Then go through a short running session with the model before getting into our summary, scoring and final recommendation. Okay, let's get underway. We're going to do an unboxing for this Class 59 from Dapol. I've purchased it from Rails of Sheffield, which is why the checked label is on there. And this was also weathered by our good friends at Rails of Sheffield. So you can see it here, custom weathered Class 59. And that's just the Dapol part number. So I did kind of like to get this in a weathered form. And I've eventually chosen not to go with the Steam option. I just don't think the Steam works that well on this. So this is a non-Steam version, and it's a DCC ready version. I'm going to have to put a decoder into it. So let's take this out of the box and go from there. So that's just our little guide to opening. So there's body clips. Now I am hoping to ultimately add a HM7000 TXS sound decoder into this once there's a sound profile for the Class 59 that we can use. So that would be my long-term intent. But in the meantime, we can run it with something else. I don't have any 59 decoders, so we'll just have to find something that's pretty close. So usual packaging excellence from Dapol, consistently good across all their locomotives, Class 68s, etc. And this is in the same sort of category. I've got a bit of a detailing kit here with got the air dams. I'll turn a coupler in there and a little bit of detailing, pipe work, and some other one or two other bits and pieces in there. So take a look at that once we've got familiar with the model. So there she is. So I do like this kind of protective sleeve. So it's not just protecting the livery now, it's protecting the weathering. So let's just get that guy out of the way. So I'll take a look at this. I'm happy enough with the sort of weathering you get from Rails. I know some people might scorn it, and that's fine. It kind of is what it is. Let's take these little protectors out. I have these on the Class 68s as well. So we free up the bogies. But I think it's adequate. It kind of takes the kind of unrealistic look off the locomotive. And a common issue, well, an issue that I have with pretty well most locomotives is that they come in a kind of a matte finish that bears no resemblance to reality in the real world. So it's better off actually putting some extra weathering on them and making them look weathered, because they don't look like a freshly liveried locomotive in real life. They just don't have the proper finish for that. So, and that particularly goes for the red type locomotives, which look quite magnificent when they're in real life, but don't look half as good as models, because the finish on them just isn't the same. So let's take a look at this guy. First, it's pretty heavy in the hand, so we'll weigh it and see how much she weighs. Good level of underbody detail. You can see it there. A lot of pipe work here, and separately fitted parts by the looks of it as well. And the bogies look pretty good. And the tanks, the labeling detail, etc. All looking fine. Nice detail on the roof. There's a nice vent there. Chimney. The weathering around that. The front looking pretty good. all in all, it looks the part. There's no fitted driver, so I'm going to take a look at that when we actually open her up. And we'll see what the lighting looks like as well. Smoke buffers, of course, as you would kind of expect on a model like this. And all-wheel pickup, all-wheel drive. And I guess we'll look to see that in action on the track. So I think out of the box, it's always good to get a first impression on a model. Is it living up to expectations? This is living up to my expectations. I'm kind of glad I got the extra weathering on it, and it'll be a kind of a niche locomotive because it's a slightly older era than I would be modelling, but with this livery it kind of brings it up to date, I guess, and it can fit in with my other newer era 11 type models, so to speak. So I'd like to keep things as current as possible, so this is going to be pretty up to date with this particular livery. So overall it looks good, and I'm happy enough with the weathering. It's mainly topside weathering. They didn't do a lot on the bottom side, and the wheels are pretty clean, as you can see. A little bit of paint on some of them, so it's always a good idea to clean the wheels on a locomotive that's been weathered like this before you start running it. And there's a bit of paint on these, so a little bit of a clean would not go astray before I try to run her in. But so far so good, and we shall move on to, we'll do the close-ups on this because we'll look at the detail. Obviously the livery will be it won't be the typical livery if you're buying this off another vendor, for example, and you'll just be getting it in the pristine form. But we'll get a good idea of what the locomotive looks like, so we'll do the usual close-ups and 360 on it. But my first impressions are, looks good, and I'm happy with the little bit of weathering on it as well from Rails. And yeah, let's see how she fares on the track, I guess, and we'll go from there. Okay, so far so good. Okay, just before we get into the close-up view, we're going to take a look inside the body itself. So it's pretty easily removed. There are 4 clips to either side. And here you can see the interior of the locomotive. This is a DCC ready version. Now it does interestingly have the repository for the smoke generator. It does have, I suppose, half of the smoke generation capability kind of built in there. You can also see the logic board has got a chip on it, and there is a kind of a logic applied to the different aux controls to determine the lighting output. And you can see the lighting pickups either end there for the cab lighting. And there's also obviously the front and rear directional lighting as well. You can just about see the board on one end there. The motor underneath is the 5-pole motor with 2 flywheels, so it's pretty good. And you can just about see some of the transmission elements there. And you've got a couple of dip switches there for options, and obviously just the blanking plate for DCC. And you've also got speaker connections, so you can kind of see them either end there, the LS plus and minus for a loudspeaker. And a reasonably decent amount of space for a speaker there, so it should be possible to fit a relatively large speaker. My larger speaker wouldn't actually fit, ironically, so I had to go with one of the smaller Megabass speakers for this. And I also installed a TXS decoder. Even though the profile doesn't exist, I decided let's go with what I want to end up with this locomotive, which is with the TXS decoder with the 59 profile on it. So I'm just running with the 66 profile in the running session, so you'll hear that in the running session. But at least I don't have to open up the locomotive again to change that. It's relatively straightforward to get access to the cab areas up above there if you want to put in a driver, so it's probably the time to do it if you're going to do it. And overall, it's not a difficult experience installing DCC into this, or DCC sound. So just to give you a look at that. Okay, so now we're going to get into our close-up view. So we'll take our usual look alongside the body. So we can see the front end here. We've got the very nice bogie in general, and it does have rotating axle boxes on the first and third of those axles. And I think with the weathering, it actually creates a nice effect. And similarly with a lot of the other underbody detail that you can see all the conduits, the cabling. I think they get picked out quite well when you weather the underside. They kind of look better than they do with just the bare plastic. The overall body is good, and I think in general there's a good level of detail on this particular model. You can see the sanders there as well. And as I say, those axle boxes do rotate, and we'll take a look at that later on. So overall, it's not a bad visual appearance. I think around the cab area, it probably misses out a little bit versus the, say, a full-blown Class 66, but otherwise not so bad. Here we're getting a top view. Now the color is a little bit off in this particular view. Apologies for that. I just had a slight overexposure when I was doing this. I made the mistake of going with automatic settings on the camera instead of using manual, which I usually do. So the color is a little bit brighter. But again, I think you can see the level of detail there. It is good, even on the roof. And that panel on the roof is fixed, that kind of grille. Whereas if you're familiar with the Hattons 66, that would have been quite loose. It was a separately fitted part, but it was actually loose. It used to come off. Chimney's good level of detail thing on the roof, and again, a little bit of weathering doesn't go astray. And I think again, you could see the front and rear there. You got the air dam there, sprung buffers, of course. I think the cabs are a little bit bland. Unfortunately, they could do probably with a little bit more internal decoration, because the windows are quite big, and when you turn down the cab light in particular, it does look quite bland. So we're going to get into the running session now, and as I said, we're running with a Class 66 profile, so please forgive that. It's on a TXS decoder, so it's a little bit whiny. Even with the Megabass speaker, it doesn't actually sound fantastic, but we'll run with that for now, and the focus here is on the running performance, not on the sound. And I think the running performance out of the box has been very good with this. My experience of this particular model. And just to clarify, I'm not actually running with a power pack here. I'm just running with the bare decoder. And I actually didn't find any problems on this. I ran it on the Layer 2 circuit, or the Radius 2 circuit as well. And it did run well there. And no problems over any of my point work. No stalling, no flickering of the lights or anything like that. In general, this was actually an excellent runner. I suppose it does have the 5-pole motor, all-wheel pickup, all-wheel drive, and it kind of lives up to those specifications in terms of the running performance, and it was very, very good. And if you consider this is the exact same train load and same circuit I was running with the Bachmann Class 70 in my review of that, this is an impeccable runner relative to the Class 70 from Bachmann, and a very much cheaper model. So that's over to you, Bachmann. As I said, I was pleased. This is a good runner. No problems at all. No issues. Sometimes you have some problems with the sanders, and I guess you could do if they were misfitted or if they got a little bit bent or something like that. I know people have had that problems on some of the other models. But in general, I found this a really good runner. Very good at low speed. Very good at high speed too. It runs well up to its prototypical speeds and beyond. And it didn't in any way flutter over any point work, or I didn't have to do any extra track cleaning for this either. I pretty well just ran this on the same circuit as I had been doing my previous runs. So overall, I'm very pleased with it. I think it is quite an exceptional runner for what it is, and I think it's a good, powerful puller as well. And there is an article that compares this particular locomotive with the Class 66. I'll put a link in the description. And I suppose the comparison they make is in terms of performance, that it is on a par with the Hattons Class 66. And the other good thing is the axle boxes don't fall out. I didn't have any problems with them. So I'll just come to a halt, and what can I say? A very good running session. So let's get into the summary. So we've been looking at the Dapol Class 59/2, specifically the 59206 John F. Yeoman, which comes in the DB Schenker red livery. And this was actually custom weathered by Rails. The standard models come in a pristine finish, and that applies to all of the current Dapol Class 59s. Comes with all-wheel pickup, all-wheel drive, and has got a 5-pole motor with twin flywheels, which does give it a very good level of performance, as we've seen. The standard model comes 21-pin DCC ready, and there are a number of other options, and I'll get into those later on when we talk about the pricing. Runs on a minimum radius 2 curves, and I didn't have any problems on my radius 2 circuit, so that seems to be fine. Extra features are the directional lighting, the cab lighting, sprung buffers, the rotating axle boxes, which do appear to work very well, and the optional smoke generator. The top scale speed I got was 85 miles per hour at 100% power, and that was consuming 280 milliamps, which is a high level of current, but this is a powerful motor, and I think you will see the kind of pulling performance will be reflective of that. And it's also very heavy, coming in at 693 grams. So this is really at the upper end of the kind of power locomotives that you can get. It's on a par, and some would even say it's a better, stronger puller than the Hattons Class 66, if you're familiar with that model. Selling price, there's 5 different options here, and these are the standard kind of prices. They do vary, and they are being discounted at the moment at different levels. DC ready anywhere from 130 to 180, which is the RRP. DC fitted, get a premium of about 30 pounds on top of that. With smoke and DCC, between 180 and 240. And the sound fitted goes all the way up to 255 up to 300 RRP, and then you can get the last option, which has got sound and smoke fitted, and that starts at 280 all the way up to 330 pounds. So a good range of options, and there's a good range of liveries. There was the first issue of liveries, and there are some newer ones that are still on pre-order, and you'll see that from the various channel partners. So let's get into the scoring. I have to say that this is an exceptional runner, and I didn't run it with the power pack, and I didn't have any problems on my layout. And the only reason I'm not giving it a full 10 out of 10 is that I think ultimately you may run into problems without having a power pack installed. But nevertheless, this is a really, really good runner. It's powerful, it's very steady, it's very tolerant in terms of the track work and even any kind of dirt on the track. I didn't have any problems whatsoever with it during the running session. Now, if I did have some dodgy track, then you would start to feel the need for the power pack, and that's really the only reason it's not a 10 out of 10. But this is a superb runner, one of the best running locomotives I've tested all year, and it was that way out of the box as well, so it doesn't need any sort of significant running in. This model is very good, pretty well out of the box. So that's really good. Appearance and detail, 8.5. Overall, it does have a good appearance, and there is a good level of detail, and it does compare favorably to the Hattons 66, though it doesn't quite have, I would say, all of the kind of features and just the look. There's just something about these models. They don't quite look as good as the Hattons models, but they have an awful lot of the detail there. There are a few things like the visible copper strips in the bogies, something that you would have seen on some of the Backman models in the past, so you've got to get the little paintbrush out and paint those over. So that's not the best. I think the general cab area is a weakness. It's rather bland, and it's large. It's physically large, and when you have the cab light on, it just looks pretty barren. There isn't really enough in there, and there's no driver either. So it's an 8.5, but it's still very good. And all of that detail, the build quality on that detail is good, so I didn't see any things falling off or anything like that. So it is a pretty good model from that perspective. The extras and variants, there's a lot of variants, a lot of different livery variants. As we saw, there's 5 different options for each livery. So there's a lot of part codes associated with this particular model for if you want to get all the smoke and sound, etc., DCC. It does have rotating axle boxes, and they do work well. So that's a premium feature in my view, and then you've got the option of the smoke capability. And when I looked at a few videos of the smoke capability, I wasn't really that keen on it, but it is there, and you certainly if you want to have that in a model, on a diesel model, this is a good option to get it. It does miss a few things, I guess, and the lighting was a bit frustrating, and it isn't fully representative of the prototype, and it's really hard to do anything with it. You've got to physically make some modifications to make it representative. Unfortunately, they didn't provide the kind of level of control that, say, a Locksound 5 controller could deal with. They've got some extra logic on the board. They've tried to allow you to do most of the functions you'd want to do with a 6-channel controller, as opposed to giving you the full 10 channels and being able to do all the things that would allow you to do. So it's a little bit frustrating. So newer models and models like the Class 66 from Hattons and the future one from Accurascale would have a greater level of lighting. control and flexibility. So that was probably one of the main frustrations I had with this. It doesn't have a driver either, and it goes back to that cab area being pretty bare. So it's good, but the lighting is probably is frustrating, and that will frustrate some people, and they will want to make some modifications perhaps associated with that. Build quality overall seems to be pretty good, and I didn't have any issues with my particular model, and I'm giving it a 9 out of 10 overall. You could even argue it might be a little bit more, but I was happy with it. No particular issues with it, as I said, and you know the lighting was really that's a design out of the box design issue and challenge, but overall I'm pretty pleased. The packaging and documentation is absolutely fine. No issues at all. It comes in the kind of standard Dapol packaging, which is very good. Documentation I thought was a little bit limited on the lighting, and again, if the lighting hadn't been so complicated, then it would be far easier to document it. So I think this was a challenge, and I think this aspect of the documentation was probably the weakest part of it, and this part of the model is probably the most frustrating aspect of the model, I would say, is probably the lighting. Price value at the 15% discount, I'm putting it at an 8. And if you can get slightly higher discounts, then that level of value will even go up a bit more. So this is a pretty good value model. It is typically at the 15%, but you will see it discounted at even more than 20% from some vendors. Some of the first release liveries, for example, you might be able to pick those up at even a cheaper price. And I think then it really does warrant consideration, because this is a quality locomotive. It's not a bargain basement locomotive. This is a really good runner with a lot of good detail. Yeah, fine, it's got a bit of frustration with regard to the lighting, but if you can live with that, getting a lot of locomotive potentially for your money. It's an 8, and it's a good 8, and I think, as I said, with higher levels of discounting over that 15%, it's even better. So the overall scoring is high, 8.7, 8.8. This is a top model. Originally, I was hoping to get and test a full-blown sound-fitted and smoke-fitted version. However, that model was delayed significantly, and I eventually cancelled my pre-order. It was coming in the very nice GBRF livery as well. It's only going to take 2 years from when I ordered it to when I was going to get it. And then with Hattons coming on the scene with the Class 66, I basically said, okay, this isn't here. I'm going to put my money into a Class 66 instead. So that's unfortunate. So I would have liked to have tested that with the full capability and be able to score the full capability. So that is unfortunate, but really, as I say, you can only wait so long for some of these models. Okay, so that brings me to my kind of final recommendation. The Dapol Class 59 has a lot going for it. It has superb running performance and a good level of detail that does justice to the prototype. And it comes with premium level features in its rotating axle boxes and optional steam capability. Couple this with a good range of liveries and decent discounting, and you have a model that warrants consideration. I love hassle-free models that do their thing with a minimum level of fuss and overhead, and that has been the case with the Class 59 for me, albeit with some complexity on the lighting side, which I think we could have done without. While I do believe it will fall short of the spectacular detail expected on the Accurascale Class 66, it still delivers an excellent package of capability at a good price point. If you're a serious diesel freight modeler and you can find a livery option that works for you, then this Class 59 from Dapol could prove to be a very reliable workhorse on your layout. So this is a good model as it stands, and I think if you buy just the bare bones model, or if you get one with sound or with the steam, if you fancy taking a pot shot with that, I think it's pretty good value, and it is a very good runner and a good looking locomotive. I think very representative of the prototype, so I don't think you'll be disappointed. Okay, thanks for joining today. I hope you found this video of use. If you're an owner of a Class 59 from Dapol, I would certainly appreciate your feedback in the comments to see how it has been going for you. If you have any other input on the Class 59 from Dapol, then please share that in the comments along with any experience you have with the model. So thanks for joining today. We'll hopefully see you on the next one. And in the meantime, take care and happy modeling.